Hi, welcome to Biz Today. As you know, it's your weekly edition of everything entrepreneurial. As we always get a successful entrepreneur into the studio and experts talking about industry trends with regard to business, if you're a small or a big business owner. And then we take a look at some big events coming up to get your networking game going. Now this week we've got a very exciting entrepreneur in studio, and I've heard his story before. I've also had the pleasure of sitting in on some of his mentorship sessions. He's Nazeem Ali, one of the founders of Shadows, which is a very popular, it's become the South African household name now for premium men's clothing and fashion. I want you to hear his story and take away some lessons from him, so don't go away. You know, Biz Today is all about bringing the best entrepreneurs in studio, and we do this because you can take away valuable lessons from their journeys and their experiences, and know that you don't always need a ton of money or amazing connections to start out a business. You just need to do as much as you can with what you have. And one gentleman that we have in studio today is Nazeem Ali, one of the founders of Shadows, which is a premium men's clothing boutique known throughout South Africa. I'm sure he's going to tell us his story today. Nazeem, it's such a pleasure to have you in studio.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. It's just amazing to get you in studio because I've heard your story. I've had the pleasure of sitting in on sessions where you've been mentoring young entrepreneurs, old entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs in between. And just the one thing I took away was the knowledge that you have of your business and also the passion. But just the integrity with which you run your business, I'm sure, along with your partners. So understanding those things, I'm glad you're here in studio to share your story today. But to kick off and to give viewers an insight into who you are, tell us a little bit about Nazeem Ali and where he came from and what inspired the entrepreneurial streak.
I suppose it started off in standard 6. I grew up in Verulam, traditional farm boy. In those days there was no malls, so it was all sport. And one of the things I did was that I had a delivery route to deliver the daily news. So I used to get my bike and deliver the daily news in my area. So that was every day after school. And on a weekend, on a Sunday, my dad used to help me because you couldn't carry 100 Sunday Times. It was too heavy. And I would wake up at 4 in the morning and deliver the Sunday Times in the Tribune. So that was my first, shall we say, foray into entrepreneurship. Yeah. And then after that, throughout my high school career, I worked for a little store in Verulam part-time. And then when I went to campus, it was always in my nature not to do one thing. So I would study and I would work at one of my competitors in Durban. And this opportunity came about, which I'll tell you about just now, where we looked at where we're going to go, and we started our first store.
You started your first store, and I know you talk about partnerships a lot. We'll come to that. But when you decided to take that leap of faith into the unknown world of entrepreneurship, you had already, along the way, I'm sure, your employed past helped to inform that decision to go into entrepreneurship. Am I right?
Correct. Because at that point, it's in life you always learn. You know, wherever you go. We were part of a session last week at the entrepreneurship, and I told you I learned something from the guys that I was supposed to be teaching. So if you keep your eyes and ears open, you're always learning something. So yes, I took a lot away from where I was working, and it was all about where am I going to be in 5 years. It's like in business, you also reassess your life, and you say, where would I like to be in 1, 3, and 5 years? And you then say, if you like the answers that you're giving yourself, you then plot a path to it. So it's a simple destination. Would you like to go to Johannesburg? How are you going to go to Johannesburg? You need your vehicle. Where are you going to stop? Are you going to stop in Maritzburg and have breakfast? Are you going to have lunch in Harrismith? And so are you going to take a whole day to get to Johannesburg, or are you going to go one hit and try to get there in 4 hours or 5 hours? So it's all about the destination, how you're going to get there. It's the same with your life. So we took a decision, and I was very fortunate that I've ended up meeting up with 4 very like-minded individuals, each with our own individual skill set. Then the one guy was good at marketing, I was good on the accounting side, and on in understanding the business from a strategic point of view. We had guys who were very operational in the system, and we looked back and said, you know, where do we go from here, and where are we going to be? And we didn't like the answer if we stayed where we were, so we made a change. And again, you take risks based on where you are in life. So I was 21 years old. So I was happy to take risks at 21. So if something happened, I still had a chance to pick up and go again. I'm very fortunate that my risks have paid off.
Wonderful to hear. Because that's one of the defining characteristics of an entrepreneur is the ability to take the risk, but plan around it and go anyway. It's going to scare you, but the more it scares you, I believe. So I want to come back, I want to bring it back a bit to the point when you decided to start a business and you met with other like-minded individuals. I will also want viewers to understand how you were able to in practical terms, the tactics used to start that business. Because a lot of people look at successful business owners and think they had an easy start. And I'm not sure that was the same for you and your colleagues. What were some of the challenges you may have faced starting the business?
Businesses like Shadows Men's Boutiques are very high. They use a lot of capital. We sell a premium product. It's all branded products. So the client that comes in, so firstly, the cost of the product is very expensive. The second problem you have is the client that comes in needs to buy the product in an environment of a similar stature. So our shop fitting bill is very high. And so it's a simple example. I mean, currently, our shop fitting per square meter, roughly rule of thumb, is 10,000 a square meter. So 100 square meter shop costs R1 million, and the stock in there is another 20,000 a square meter. So before you've done anything, it's a R3 million investment in one store. So I mean, the five of us didn't have capital. We all came from very humble beginnings and things like that. And so the only other option was to get outside capital. And Al Barakah Bank at the same time was starting, and we went to them. And after 6 months of hard work, cash flows, projections, income statements, and they then funded us this money. But we were the first Islamically joint venture transaction, meaning they were our partners. And they were very kind to us in that respect, and I always, acknowledge them in the formation of our business. And so the first store started. And the other thing that happened, because Al Barakah Bank are very scared to lose their shareholders' funding, they were extremely cautious in the way we ran our business. So we were doing balance sheets every 2 months. And at that time, I remember, hating them for it, because every 2 months you'd have to work till 2 in the morning and count the stock and do a complete balance sheet. And I would say, why? I mean, we know we're making money. 3 years down the line, I realized why. Because it instilled those disciplines in me to keep on checking where you're going. It's so easy to lose focus in your business. So we could spot very quickly this area of the business is not doing well. So they were our partners for the first 2 years. And I remember, like, now you look at it, one of the least, I was very young. I was 21 years old, and I had the captains of industry across me, the board at that time. I used to actually keep a beard just to look older, so that, because you were there asking them for these massive amounts of funding, and you're a little lighty.
And but it's so interesting that you mentioned that, and I love that you brought up that point. There's another gentleman I was speaking to who's now accessed funding from Facebook for his company. A young South African gentleman, and he's early 20s, and he said to me, this is, in South Africa, the kind of perception that you have, where a young entrepreneur is not taken seriously enough to be able to talk business across the table with, as you say, captains of industry and people who have been in the industry for years. But you pull that off, which gives our viewers some kind of insight into the kind of mindset you need to be creating from a young age.
Correct. You see, the problem is, it's not so much that people now, the captains of industry don't want to give finance, or the decision makers. It's just that they've been through the mill and they've paid their school fees. So it's when you're 20, you can conquer the world. When you're 30, you realize, oh, hold on, some of these mountains are a little bit harder to climb. And when you're 40, you realize, hey, hold on, you don't need to fight everything. People tend to become more conservative in their thinking. But they're more conservative in their thinking to help you, because nobody wants to lose money.
Okay, that makes sense.
So it's not just a critique as per such as these guys are they fuddy-duddies and things like that. Yeah. It's more they've paid their school fees. Okay,
so that makes sense. I like the way you explained that. You went to them and obviously pitched a business called Shadows.
Yes.
And I don't think you're in anyone's, the business itself is not in anybody's shadow in your particular industry. at all right now. You're probably the leaders when it comes to men's premium clothing, and men come to you hoping that they do walk out looking like a James Bond. But you know your business so well, down to telling them what kind of fabric will suit them according to where they're going to be attending a function. What inspired the name Shadows?
Okay. Shadows, I call that my banker. The name itself, we were having a discussion as to what would be a name that will appeal to the masses 25 years ago. And there were various names, and we just couldn't click right. Anyhow, in one of the discussions, we just stopped, and the topic just moved on to our beloved Prophet, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And we just started talking about him, and one of the living miracles of our Prophet is that he never had a shadow. So, and you know the reason why. I mean, he was the brightest object ever. So he's brighter than the sun. So he would cast a shadow on the sun, not the other way around. And shadows. So the actual inspiration for the name came from the miracle of our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
And I have heard you tell me this before, and I love hearing the story again, and particularly for our viewers, because you as viewers may know where you have your source of inspiration from, but I know I asked you a question once about how does spirituality play a role with doing business, because that's where your most source of integrity comes from in terms of doing business and running it and having people trust and believe in you. And as our viewers would know, we have viewers from a range of backgrounds, that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was known to us as being one of the most trustworthy business or tradesmen that there was in Saudi Arabia at the time. Yeah. So it's just incredible to hear that you took that away and now run that through your business daily. Well,
it's very simple. When Rasulullah when the angel Jibreel came and gave him the revelation, he came down and he then told the Meccans, if I had to tell you there's an army behind this mountain, will you believe me? And they said, yes, because you are the truthful one. And he then expounded upon the revelation. So prior to the revelation, Rasulullah was a businessman, an honest businessman whose word was his bond. So if he could do it, I mean, there's a place for everybody in Islam. There's a place for the Maulana, there's a place for the Buzruk that sits on the mountain. There's also a place for the honest businessman who can propagate Islam through his business dealings. So I think businessmen as a whole have a very important role to play in that.
100%. Or propagate the universal code of humanity, as it were.
Yeah. So if you just do it with integrity, I mean, you know, automatically people realize that, you know what, he's a businessman, but he's a Muslim businessman. So, you know, I can remember days.
One from any other, I'm sure.
Most religions expound it, it's just that we don't practice it. So we need to practice it as much as we can. Yeah. So yeah, so that's where I just believe that the spirituality comes in.
Some of the challenges you faced while building the business, what were they across the years? This is a 25-year-old business. It's now a solid business in terms of, if you look through KZN and through South Africa, you've got a standing that you've worked hard to get there, and you've obviously earned the respect of your business community. So no one can pull punches with you, I am sure of that. How do you navigate those challenges? Because you've got to climb this mountain to get there. But also, what were some of the challenges you faced, and how do entrepreneurs take away a lesson from that?
Okay, there's challenges all the time. So, you know, if I have to start thinking back, I mean, there's currently a challenge. We've alluded to it earlier in our discussion with the online shopping. Now, any business has to continuously reassess their business in terms of the SWOT analysis, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So you can look at a threat as being online shopping. You can turn it into a strength if you become the leader in that sector. So that's currently. I can remember 20 years ago, we took a strategic decision that we felt that our future client will only be in the mall. Now that is a weakness because we were not in the mall. We were only in town. We were a town-based business. We had 2 stores in town. And then we took the decision that we will never open another store in the CBD. And people looked at us and said, you guys are mad. And we said, no, this is the way we want to go. So that we took a threat and converted it into a strength. But you got to stick to your guns. Now, again, you got to reassess, because that strength, which I told you was originally a threat, became a strength, could now become a weakness again, because currently the escalations are all kicking in and the rents to turnover ratios are now going out to kilter. So in other words, whereas before you'd pay 500 a square meter at a mall, you're now paying 1,000 and 1,200 a square meter. So all of a sudden your rent to turnover ratios are not equal. So that now so you've got to start watching those issues.
So that's an interesting take on challenges. Because generally when I ask entrepreneurs about challenges, they talk to us about what they faced. But your take is you look at challenges, but you potentially can turn their risks or their threats, but you potentially turn them into opportunities or strengths.
Wherever we can, there are some threats which are beyond your control. A simple example, everything that Shadows does is imported. So we're exposed to the exchange rates. Unfortunately, certain things are beyond my control. The political situation in the country, where we could have the rand go from 14 to 18 rand in the space of a weekend. Those are things beyond my control. What I can do is mitigate the risk, and there's various mechanisms to that. You can put, you can take forward cover on your exchange rate. So those are decisions you start to make. Again, those are decisions you make after paying the school fees.
100%. If you've just tuned in, you're watching Biz Today with me, Nazareen Ebrahim, and we've got seasoned entrepreneur in studio, Nazeem Ali, one of the founders of Shadows. It's a premium men's clothing boutique in Durban and South Africa. Stay tuned for the rest of our interview.